Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is show you how I wanted you to do the project and how you could have accomplished the goals. And so this is for the benefit of the people who didn't get it right the first time, but you'd like to have a second shot at it. And remember, if you didn't get it right the first time, you can't get an A on it anymore. But on your second shot, if you get it right, well, you can still get a decent grade. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. All right, so you should be seeing my burglar alarm right now. Now, this is actually a copy of my burglar alarm because I wanted to keep the original in good shape so I can use it later. So I made a copy of it. And so now I'm going to mess with this copy. All right, so first off, let's just verify that it does what I told you I wanted it to do. Okay, so I'm going to start the simulation. Let's see if it does the countdown right. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's looking good. Now, while it's counting down, I'm going to move the slider over here from darkness to light. Okay, because hopefully you guys remember what I told you is that whenever you start the simulation, Tinkercad always starts it with the photoresistor as if it's seeing darkness. And so if I hadn't slid that over there, then when it finished the countdown, it would have thought the burglar was there and it would have gone right into the alarm mode. And I didn't want that to happen. So during the countdown time, I, I quickly clicked on this thing and I quickly moved the slider over so it's dark, so it's not dark anymore. Okay, so you saw that the countdown did in fact work correctly. I got the 5 and then the 4 and then the 3 and then the 2 and then the 1 flash on the LED. And then I got a short beep. So now that I know that everything's working right, and so now my burglar alarm is in what I like to call lookout mode. So it's sitting there silently watching the photo sensor. And so if a cloud goes by, then the room might get a little bit darker, but that's not really a burglar. And so I don't want to set off a false alarm. So you can see that, yeah, I've got a little bit of play here. I can let the room get a little bit darker without setting off the burglar alarm. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's suppose that the burglar walks by. Oh, and by the way, let me turn on the sound here. So you're going to hear the beep now when the burglar walks by. Okay, so there it goes. Okay, so you saw that when the burglar walked by, the thing started beeping. You'll notice the light came on and the light stayed on. And then when the burglar went away, then the thing stopped beeping, but the light stayed on. Okay, so this is what I wanted you guys to do. Now, how could we do that? So those of you that are having trouble, I want you to watch really closely. I might not post this recording because if I post the recording, that would be a little bit too easy. So I don't know. I'm recording this, but I don't know if I'll actually post it. But so take good notes. So assume that I'm not going to post it and take really good notes of what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to stop my simulation. So I'm going to go into the code. Now you'll notice that all I have are the blocks. All I have is the text. I don't have the blocks anymore because what I had to do was after I used the blocks to create my code, I then had to go into the text and move some things around. So hopefully you guys remember there's a part of the code on the Arduino that says it's called the void setup part. And anything that is in the void setup part of the code is stuff that only runs once. So all this code that you see right here, all of this code, this is the setup code. This is stuff that runs only one time. And so this is the thing that makes it beep 5 times, then 4 times, then 3 times, then 2 times. Okay. And then down here, this is what we call the loop part of the code. And it says void loop. Okay. This is the part of the code that runs over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. Now, when you use the blocks to create code, Tinkercad automatically puts everything into the void loop part of the code, even though you don't want it. Some of it you want to be up in the setup part. Tinkercad puts it in the loop part. That's just the way it does. It's kind of an annoying thing, but we can deal with it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get rid of all my code. And so then I'm going to recreate the code from scratch the way that I wanted you to do it. So if I go back into blocks, well, it's telling me that, hey, if you go back in the blocks, it's going to erase all your code. And yeah, I'm okay with that, right? Except that what it does have this default code that it always puts in there. And this is just something that makes the LED blink, the built-in LED blink on and off. But I don't even want that. So I want all the code completely gone. Okay. So how could we do the countdown code? Well, there are several different ways we could do it. The way that I'm going to show you is not the most efficient way to do it, but it is the easiest to understand. And so I'm going to do it this way, even though it's actually possible to do it in a different way that uses less lines of code. But if you're new to computer programming, that more efficient way is a little bit harder to understand. So I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it the inefficient way that's a little bit easier to understand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a repeat statement. And this is the thing where I want to repeat something 5 times, which is basically I want to blink the LED 5 times. So you'll notice the default is 10 times. So first thing I'm going to do is change that from 10 to 5. So what is it that I want to do 5 times? Well, I want to blink the LED. So I need to pull in the output thing. So I want to set my pin to high. Now, which pin do I want? Well, looks to me like right now I've got my LED plugged into pin 13. Okay, so I'm going to set pin 13 to high. And then I want to wait for a little bit, but I don't want to wait for 1 whole second. That's going to take too long. So I'm just going to have a wait for like maybe 0.2 seconds. That should be good enough. And then after 0.2 seconds, then I want to turn my pin 13, I want to turn it to low because I want to turn it off, right? But then I need to wait again. So I'm going to put in another wait statement. And I'm just going to wait in for 0.2 seconds is all. Now, there's nothing magical about the 0.2. You could put in a different amount of time, but I want it to be relatively short because otherwise it's just going to take too long. Okay, so this is going to blink it 5 times. Now, if I immediately go into another repeat where I have it blink 4 times, well, then my 5 blinks and my 4 blinks are going to run together. So what I need to do is at the end of the 5 blinks, I need to put in another wait here. So I'm going to wait for 1 second. Okay, so now I'm ready to copy and paste this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to duplicate and bingo. So this is the one that I'm going to make before. And then I'm going to duplicate again. This one is going to be 3, duplicate it again. This is going to be 2, and then duplicate it again. And so that's going to be my 1. Okay, so let's take this guy here and let's put him under there. And let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to change the repeat 5 to a repeat 4. Okay, and this guy, I'm going to have him be repeat 3. So then I'm going to put him down there. This guy here, he's going to be my repeat 2. So I changed that to a 2. And so let me move him down here. Okay, now this guy, I could have him be repeat 1. You know, I could do that, or I could just pull this out because I don't really need a repeat. I could just get rid of the repeat and I could just put this guy down here. Okay, so now you see, now I can zoom in a little more here. Okay, so now you can see I'm going to repeat this 5 times, and then I'm going to come down to 4 times, and then I'm going to come down and do it 3 times, and I'm going to come down to it 2 times, and now I just do it once. Okay, so I've done the 5 flashes. Now I want to give a short beep just so that the owner knows that, you know, the beeper works. So let's come to output and let's do this one. I'm going to play speaker on pin whatever. So now I need to know what pin I've got my speaker plugged into. Okay, it looks like my speaker is plugged into pin 8. So I need to tell it that it's pin 8. And I could change the tone if I want, but I'm just going to leave the tone. That's good, I think. 1 second. Well, I could leave it at 1 second, but let's make it be 0.5. Okay. And then I need to put a wait in there. And I'll just have a wait for 1 second. That'll be fine. Okay, so everything that you see here, all of this is stuff that I want to do once and only once. Now, if I run the program right now, what you're going to see is it's not going to just do it once. It's going to keep on doing it forever and ever. So let's just see that that works. Okay, so I've started my simulation. So there goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1. Here's my beep. And now it goes back and it does the countdown again. So this is the problem that some of you had. Okay. Some of you apparently did everything that I just did, but then you left it like that. So here's the thing is we need to move this from the setup part of the code, or sorry, from the loop part of the code into the setup part of the code. So if I go look at blocks plus text right now, you'll see this right here, this is the setup part of the code. This is the stuff that only gets done one time, okay? And so all this stuff that I just created, you can see that Tinkercad stuck it in what we call the loop part of the code, which is not what I want. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have to come down here, I'm gonna have to highlight all this. I'm gonna have to cut it, and then I'm gonna have to paste it up in here. But I don't want to do that just yet, because if I want to do any editing of the text part of the code, do you remember what happens if I go? So look what happens. I'm going to go to text and I'm going to get an error message. Well, not an error message. I'm going to get a warning message. And the warning says, are you sure that you want to close the block editor? Because if you close the block editor, you will not be able to go back. And I'm not quite ready to do that just yet. So instead of continuing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel, okay? And because I want to do a little bit more with the blocks before I go in to do that. Okay, so what I want to do with the block is I want to tell the Arduino what to do if the burglar is present, okay? And so I'm going to do that by using an if statement. I'm going to pull in an if statement here. And then, so if something happens, then I have to tell it what to do. So the something that's going to happen comes under the math category. And I've got this comparator test here. So I'm going to pull in a comparator test. Okay, and let me enlarge it a little bit more here just so that you guys can clearly see. Okay, so if something is less than or equal to or greater than or whatever, something else. Okay, so what I want to put in this first thing is I want to tell the Arduino to look at my input pin. So if you come over here, okay, this is the electric circuit that has the sensor in it. And so you can see that A0 is the pin that I'm using as my input pin. So what I want to do is I want to tell the Arduino that if the voltage that it sees on A0 is higher than some threshold, then I want it to start beeping. Okay, so I look here and I see A0 is the pin that I've got. Okay, so then what I want to do is I want to tell it to read A0, and I want to put that in this first little oval here. So that's under input. And you see I've got a thing here that says read analog pin. So if I put that in there, and you see the default is A0. Now I don't have to have it be A0 if I want. I mean, tell you what, just for grins here, let's put it in A1 instead, just to prove that I can. All right, so in that case, I'm going to tell the Arduino to watch pin A1, and then I want it to do something if what it sees on A1 is greater than some number. Now, you should know how to calculate this number. This is the input voltage multiplied by 205. And hopefully you guys remember from the last time the reason why we multiply by 205. Okay, so let me just let's just suppose, to make things easy, let's suppose that I want to put my threshold voltage at 1 volt. So I want the Arduino to start beeping the alarm if the input voltage goes above 1 volt. So hopefully you guys remember from last time that 1 volt on the Arduino input pin gets reported as 205 Arduino units. So I'm just going to say, okay, so if it reads analog pin A1, and if the number that gets read out is greater than 205, then I know that my input voltage is greater than 1 volt. So then what do I want to do? Well, first thing I want to do is I want to turn on my LED on pin 13, and I'm going to turn it on and leave it on. But also, I want to turn on the speaker, and I forgot what pin my speaker was on. I think it was pin 8, right? Let's see, yeah, okay. Yeah, my speaker is on pin 8. Okay, so okay, so I tell it my speaker's on pin 8, and I'm just going to leave it at tone 60. 1 second is a bit long. I'm gonna change that to 0.5 seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to put a little bit of a wait in there, and I'll just wait for 1 second. Okay, so then it's going to beep, and it's only going to beep for half a second, and so then it's just going to. And now when it gets down to the bottom here, the way that the Arduino code works is once it gets down to the bottom, then it immediately jumps all the way back up to the top again. Okay, so if the burglar is there and if the burglar stays there, then what happens is it's gonna beep, and then it's gonna jump up here, and if the burglar is still there, it's gonna beep again. It's gonna jump up here, and if the burglar is still there, it's gonna beep again. Okay, so it's just gonna keep on doing that as long as the burglar is there, it's gonna keep beeping, and then as soon as the burglar is not there, then it won't beep anymore. Okay, so we now have the code that does everything that we want, except that the countdown part of the code is in the loop section, which is not where I want. Okay, so now we're ready to go and fix that. So now I'm going to go into the text editor, and I'm going to get this warning says, hey, be careful. If you continue, you're not going to be able to go back to blocks editor. And now I'm okay with that because now I'm ready. So I'm going to click continue. Okay, so now here's all that code that I told you was, this is the part that makes it beep 5 times. This is the part that makes it 4, and then 3, and then so forth and so on. Okay, so all the way down to here. Okay, so this is all the part of the code that I really want to be in the setup part of the code, not in the loop part of the code. So now that I've highlighted it, I'm just going to do Control X, so it cuts it out. Then I'm going to come up here into the setup part of the code and hit return. And now I'm going to do Control V. Okay, so now it has just taken all that code and it's put it in the setup part of the code. So that means it's only going to run 1 time. And the only thing that I left down here in the loop part of the code was this part. Okay. So this is the part of the code where it looks at analog pin A1, and if it sees that it's greater than 205, which corresponds to 1 volt, then it'll beep 1 time, and it'll only beep 1 time in this loop. But the thing is that once it finishes the loop, once it gets down here, it jumps back up here again. It checks to see if the burglar is still there. If the burglar is still there, okay, then it beeps again. Now, some of you might say, well, what about this digital write 13 high? Well, it's okay if you tell it to turn on a pin that's already on. No harm done at all, okay? So even though I've already told it, even though I don't really need this, this line right here the second time through, there's no harm in putting it there. So I'm going to leave it there. So the important thing here is it's going to check to see if the burglar is there. If the burglar is still there, then it's going to beep. And then it's going to come back up again. It's going to check again. If the burglar is still there, it's going to beep again. So it's just going to keep on beeping as long as the burglar is there. And then if the burglar goes away, then the next time it checks to see it's going to see that the burglar is not there anymore, and so it won't beep anymore. But pin 13, which is where I've got my LED, that's going to stay high. Okay, so I think we're good. Let me hide the code, and let me see if it works. All right, so I'm going to start my simulation, and as soon as my simulation starts, I'm going to take my photo sensor and I'm going to set it over here to dark because I don't want it to beep just yet. So there's the countdown. Okay, so the countdown just finished. So everything's good there. And so here's my photo alarm. And somehow, I don't know how that thing got up there. I must have accidentally dragged it up there by mistake. Okay, so let me do that again. Okay, so I'm going to start my simulation. I'm going to click on this, pull it over there really quick. Okay, so here's my countdown. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Okay, so the setup part of the code is now finished. The Arduino is now sitting there silently watching to see if a burglar comes. So let me click on this. Okay, so if I put the slider over here, okay, if I put the slider over just a little bit, okay, so that's kind of simulating that maybe a cloud has gone by, so the room darkened a little bit. But remember, I don't want it to beep in that case. So if it was beeping right now, I would consider that to be a false alarm. And so I'd say, oh, no good, right? So I only want it to beep when I get it about halfway. So I've got it at the halfway point right now, and you'll notice it's not beeping yet. So I'm going to pull it over a little bit more. So now I'm at the 3/4 mark and it's still not beeping. So that tells me that my threshold is too low. My thing is not sensitive enough. If I come all the way over, okay, there, now it's beeping. Now it stopped. Okay, so my burglar alarm is technically working right, but it's not sensitive enough. Okay, I want it to go off when I get the slider right here. So it's not. Okay, so how do I fix that? Well, let's stop the simulation. Let's start up the code. This number that you see right here, that's the number that fixes it. So if I change that to a smaller number, then that'll make it more sensitive. So I'm going to change it to a number that I already know ahead of time is too small, but I'm going to do it on purpose because I want you guys to see how it works. I'm going to take that number, I'm going to change it to 50. All right. So now let's run the code again with this thing set for 50. So I'm going to start my simulation and then I'll really quickly bring this over. Okay, so now we're doing the countdown. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Okay, so now we're in lookout mode. Okay, so now let's see what happens if I come over just there. You see, it set off the burglar alarm too soon. So that's not good. I'm going to get lots of false alarms, and then my neighbors are going to get really unhappy. So I got to make it so it's not so sensitive. So 50 was obviously too small of a number. So let's make it be something a little bit in between there. How about let's set it for maybe, how about 75? Let's just try 75. So I'm just doing trial and error right now, which I'm okay with you guys doing. Now, ideally, I would prefer that you actually do the calculations, but trial and error, it works, and I'm going to let you get away with it. Okay, so let's see if we got it now. So I'm going to start my simulation. I'm going to quickly bring it over here. Okay, so we're doing the countdown. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. There's the beep. Okay, so the countdown is finished. The alarm is now activated. So let's see if the sensitivity is good. So if I bring it over this much, good. It's not going off. I'm glad to see that. Now I'll bring it to the halfway point. Aha, there it goes. Okay, bring it back. It stops. So bingo, I think we are good. We now have a working burglar alarm, and I like the sensitivity. I like the fact that I can bring it over, about a third of the way and nothing happens. And it only starts beeping at the half. Okay, so that is perfect. All right, we now have a fully functioning burglar alarm. So that's what I want you guys to do. What I just did is what I want you to do. All right, so KJ, I see you got a question. Okay, so what's your question? You're getting a random error. Well, yeah, how am I supposed to answer that? So we got to figure out why you're getting a random error. You're going to have to be, oh, it's about the tone. Okay, well, still, you got to ask me a specific question if you want a specific answer. So if you do what I just did, then it will work as you've now seen. So if you're getting a random error, that means you did something wrong. So you're gonna have to go back and figure it out. Figure out what you did wrong.
How do I make my LED brighter? My LED is extremely dim. And I know it's like with the resistor, isn't it?
Yeah, it is with the resistor. So the problem is that your resistor is too high of a value. So if you look at mine, so if you click on the resistor, it'll tell you. So I've got my resistor at about 120 ohms. So I would recommend that you set yours at something around there. If you set it for a higher number, that would explain why your resistor is really dim. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, and I see somebody just asked me a private question. He says, is it Command X to copy? Yes. And then you're saying, what is it to paste? Well, actually, if you're on a Macintosh, it's probably Command X. But if you're on a PC running Windows, it's the Control that you want to commit. So it's Control X to copy, and then if you want to paste it, it's Control V. Okay. Control X to actually Control X doesn't copy. Control X cuts, which is what we want in this case. We don't want to just copy. We want to actually move it. So Control X will cut it, and then Control V will paste it. Any other questions? Okay, so those of you that either didn't get an A the first time because there was some problem with what you submitted, or those of you that didn't submit anything at all the first time, okay, so you guys can now hopefully do it. And so go ahead and resubmit it, even though the deadline has passed. I will accept it. Now, if you didn't submit anything at all prior to the deadline, then the best I'm going to give you is a C. And in order to get that C, you got it to work perfectly. Because turning things in on time is really important when you're in engineering. So if you didn't turn in anything at all before the deadline, then I really can't in good conscience give you anything better than a C. Those of you that did turn in something before the deadline, even though what you didn't turn in was right, at least you turned in something, and that's worth something to me. So in your case, the best I'll give you guys will be a B, which is it's not an A, but hey, it's better than nothing. Okay, so I just see KJ just asked. He says that he believes his code is the exact same as mine, but it's not working. Well, that means it's not exactly the same as mine, KJ. So I mean, you just saw that it works when I do it. So you need to go back and check carefully, because there is something wrong, and it's up to you to find it. Okay, so guys, any other questions? Other than the fact that KJ is having trouble tracking down. So KJ, I promise you, it will work. So there's an error in there somewhere. You just need to find the error. Okay. All right, so everybody else, if you want to just go ahead and type "bye" into the chat box and head out, then that's good. Get me the submission before Thanksgiving Day, okay? Because the day after Thanksgiving, that's when I'm going to do the grading. So I need it by Thanksgiving Day. All right, I will see you guys all later then.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great Thanksgiving break.
You too. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving, you guys too. Bye.